Okay.
Wow. So just so everyone knows, this is recorded and it's shared on the town's website with all the other meeting recordings.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone in here to the Advisory Planning Commission meeting, September 3rd, 2024. And we've got a fairly full agenda today. So the first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a mover? Kim, Eric, everybody in favor? Okay. The second is the adoption of minutes from May 7, 2024. I wasn't at the meeting, so I have no objection to them. Moved by Kim, second by Todd. And all in favor, any comments or questions on them? Okay, all in favor? The motion is carried. We have two items on the agenda here, development permit applications and development variance permit applications. And I'd like to make a couple of comments just before we start. Just for those of you who are new, and maybe we should all be reminded, the development permit application applies to those areas designated in the OCP where guidelines have been set out for how they should be regulated. And so there are specific intents and purposes with development permit applications and development permit zones. The second, the development variance permit, I think it's to be very clear on that. We have a zoning bylaw, and these are deviations, requests for deviations from what zoning permits. And so you be very clear on that. They are exceptions to the rule, so to speak. And so we can discuss that a little bit later, what that means in terms of these particular proposals. And the final comment, just a reminder as well, is that the Advisory Planning Commission is an advisory body to council. It's not a body that's set up to ratify developer proposals or staff recommendations. It's for us as members to independently look at the proposals in terms of the OCP, in terms of the zoning bylaw, and make a decision whether or not what is being requested fits, if there's something missing, something should be added, or whether it's been misinterpreted or whatever. It's our interpretations as members of the Advisory Planning Commission, and then we make a recommendation to council. I should be very clear about that we are an independent body, and any recommendations from anybody do not have to be followed. They just simply are recommendations as such, and we deliberate as to what we think we should say to council about any particular matter brought before us. And in this case, the matters are two development permit and development variance permit applications. Okay, that being said, the first one on the list, agenda item number 4, is a development permit application. The numbers are in the agenda. The address specific to them are 9667 5th Street. And we'll turn it over to staff to give us an introduction to this. Oh, and just one other housekeeping thing before we start. We will have a chance to deliberate on them. The procedure is that staff will make a presentation. You can ask technical questions of staff if you have questions about what's being said, but don't get into the evaluation part of it. And then secondly, the proponent will make a presentation as well. And again, ask questions of the proponent if you feel that you want clarification, if you feel that something should be made more clear. I guess that's what clarification is. And if you feel that you want to, well, don't editorialize at this point, okay? So that we keep it kind of flowing, because this could be a long meeting if two items like these are an indication of, or the past is an indication. Okay, over to staff.
Thank you, Clarence. So the first application we're looking at is 9667 5th Street. So this is an application for an 8-story or sorry, 8-unit, 3-story residential townhouse development located at along 5th Street. There's 4 single-level units to be accessed at grade at the rear of the property, while 4 2-story units are accessed by stairs fronting 5th Street. Parking for the units will be located in the rear yard, where 8 parking stalls will be accessed through the rear lane. An existing accessory structure on the property is proposed to be relocated in the rear yard of the property and to be used as a common storage area, as well as to shelter garbage and recycling. There will be raised garden beds also proposed in the rear yard within a communal area for future residents. There's a few changes that have been made to the design of the plans since the application was first presented to council. So there's changes to the roof line. There's an increase to the side yard setbacks by 0.3 meters on either side. There's additional garbage and recycling proposed, as well as bicycle parking.
Are you saying this, what we have, there have been changes since then?
The plans that we have right in front of us are the most up-to-date plans. Yeah. And then there's been a few changes to the rear yard layout as well. But the plans we have are the most up-to-date. There are several variances proposed. So to increase the maximum building height, the number of stories from 2.5 to 3 stories, to increase the maximum height of stairs permitted to project into a front yard, and then 3 setback variances. So 1 to decrease the minimum interior side yard setback, to decrease the minimum parking space setback, and to decrease the minimum setback for an accessory building. Just looking through the staff report, the proposal is generally consistent with the town's official community plan and its guidelines. It appears to have a strong visual connection between the building and the street front, which helps to promote the pedestrian-oriented nature of the area. The building seems to be in scale with the surrounding neighborhood, despite the variances proposed. And it does create some interest with subtle shifts in the facade of the building. Staff have included some areas of improvement near the end of the report. And these include mainly surrounding screening and providing more visual interest to the side, the north and south side facades of the building.
Okay, before we ask if there's any questions, just a comment on the height.
Yeah.
There is an error. The height variance, 8 meters is actually 26.25 feet.
Okay. Note of that. Thank you.
Rather than 29.5. Okay. Anybody have any questions of staff?
Is the existing accessory building that's currently there, is that that's built into the existing setback, which is why the setback variance is being requested for that?
So there's been some shifts in the parking layout, which has resulted in relocating the accessory building within the required setback area.
Okay. Right.
Clarence, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, listen, go ahead.
Thanks, and I'm sure we'll get into this when we discuss the height, but the front flood construction level, I'm no expert on this, but those, if I compare it to the recent development on Orchard and 5th, it seems quite a bit lower for those, or I should say that other proposal seems quite a bit higher. So I'm not clear on how this meets the flood construction level. That's one question. I'll ask them both at the same time. And the servicing, I was quite touched by the grass lane, so I'm assuming that the servicing for garbage and recycling would all be from the Fifth Avenue, that trucks aren't going up that lane. So those are my 2 questions.
Thanks, Lucina. To answer your first question, the applicant has provided a report from a geotechnical engineer, which has stated a flood construction level, but it has assessed the proposed plans, and it has deemed that the proposed elevations are safe for habitation at those levels. Do you have anything to add to that, Melissa?
Yeah, the report is by a certified engineer, and so staff review that. That's done at an operational level, and engineers report to their professional bodies. So if their engineer is saying that it's safe for the use intended, and that's their professional statement, then that's accepted by staff. If we need any clarification from that on specific building elements they'll be doing to make sure that it's safe, and that would be an operational thing between the building inspector and the engineer looking for that later on at time of building permit.
So just for clarification, that's done with individual applications. There's not a general purpose guideline. In other words, if an application says, I want to go this deep, they have to have that certified.
They have to
They could go
provide,
deeper theoretically.
they have to provide a report from a professional engineer assessing the flood hazard, reviewing their proposed plans. They recommend a minimum floor elevation, and then they review what's proposed to be built. And if that engineer can certify that it will be safe for the use intended, then that's as far as the town can go. We can't say, oh, but we don't think so, it needs to be higher. We need to accept that professional recommendation. And there would be a covenant registered on title before the building permit is issued to make sure that the future buyers are aware that this process has happened and that it's been designed in accordance with the engineer's report.
Okay, and it's always plan specific.
It's plan specific. We don't have a set minimum elevation and say you must build to X. If the property is below 5 meters, as it says in the report, the town has a policy. It says if the natural elevation is below 5 meters, they have to produce this report by a certified engineer that reviews the hazard. But everywhere is site specific. The hazard varies from site to site. So that's been reviewed.
Okay.
And then the lane, or the question was about the grass surface in the lane.
So with the redevelopment of this property, the laneway will have to be improved. So that will mean surfacing and potentially servicing, but that is something our engineering department will look into further when they're looking at offsite improvements. Does that answer your question, Lucina?
Thank you.
Bernadine and then Kel.
Actually, I thought we were going to have all the discussion further on.
Just a question on technical things.
And certainly I have some comments about flood construction levels as well, but I think
Okay.
I would like to leave them till later.
Yep, absolutely.
I just had a question. The bylaw used to have units per acre or units per hectare. It no longer does have that, as far as I know. But how would this proposal relate to units per acre? And how would that relate to the old RM5 townhouse residential zoning?
Sure. So the RM5 zone does go by floor area ratio to measure density. I'm not sure what this would translate to. I can do the calculation and get back to you on that.
Okay, so what would the floor area ratio be of the proposal and here it is 1.07.
Yeah.
And so that conforms. And what is the maximum floor area ratio?
So the maximum base density is 0.75 floor area ratio, and then there's a maximum bonus density floor area ratio of 1.3 floor area ratio. So if it's above the base density, then with bonus density or contributions, then it's permitted to have additional density. So with this application, a bonus density contribution would be required to achieve that floor area ratio.
And are there other recent developments in the area that have floor area ratios of this level?
I'm not sure off the top of my head if there's any in that specific area, but there are quite a few around Sydney with similar
Similar floor area ratios?
Yeah.
Okay,
For
thank you.
in the RM5 zones.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just another quick question. Zoning bylaw allows for 2 stories, correct?
2.5 stories in the RM5 zone.
Yeah, but 0.5 story is not a livable story. Right?
Well, it is. It's the zoning bylaw allows it as a half basement, and that is a livable story. It's half in the ground, half above. The ceiling can't be more than 1.2 meters out of the ground.
Yeah, but you couldn't make a suite in that.
You can.
In 1.5?
Well, no, the basement drops down into the ground.
Right.
It's partly in the ground, partly out. So it's technically 3 floors of living space, but the half story is the bottom half. If you were to look at a cross section of a 2.5 story house, it would show 3 floors of living space.
Okay.
And grade level would kind of cut through the middle of the lowest floor.
Okay. Okay, any other? Okay, we'll move on then to the proponent. See on screen, Niall Feltiel, you're the proponent.
Correct,
Would you like
yes.
to make a presentation?
Yeah, I do have one. I'm just curious, process-wise, am I sharing my screen for this, or is the town sharing the presentation that I sent in?
You're welcome to share your screen.
Okay, give me 1 moment.
I just removed the spotlight from the Town of Sydney camera here, so it should be allowing you to share your screen when you're ready. Is it working on your end there?
Yeah, 1 moment. Just queuing it up here, and just bear with me because I am on a family vacation in Osoyoos right now, so it might be if you hear kids screaming and stuff, that's par for the course. Are you able to see that screen there? Are folks able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so yeah, hello, my name is Niall Peltiel with Island View Land Management. Pleased to be here today at ADP presenting my application for 9667 5th Street Development Variance Permit application. Very briefly, oh, there we go. The presentation outline will show the context of the site, the design principles and planning rationale that went into forming the application that you see before you, the proposed layout and landscape plan, as well as a detailed outline of the different variances that are being requested, as well the rationale behind them or justification behind them. As well, I go through the changes that have been made between the initial application when it was seen by the Town of Sydney Council and the application before you all today. So just for context, the property we're looking at is the one in blue. And as Lucinda pointed out, it does have access through the rear laneway on the site, as is kind of the standard design and servicing pattern requested by the Town of Sydney on all of these homes within the Orchard neighborhood. The lot size is approximately 8,200 square feet. It is zoned RM5, low density residential. While the zoning bylaw has been updated through the updated zoning bylaw review process with the Town of Sydney, by and large, the land use intent and objective within the bylaw have remained fairly similar. The OCP designation for this site is neighborhood commercial, and I've listed the relevant development permit area guidelines policies that do affect this property, and as are outlined in the staff report that you received ahead of this meeting. The key principles that I applied in and objectives to this property with Ms. Cummings, the designer, who worked on this project with me, is one, to create a dynamic diversity of homes that create value for the town of Sydney and meeting their housing needs, creating an attainable tenure. The design and intent of this project is either to make it work as a purpose-built rental project or a condominium project. I'm still working through financing on either one to determine which is viable. My intent, however, is to look at this as a purpose-built rental project, but CMHC financing and everything else is a little bit challenging, so I'm just still going through the discussions in trying to make that viable. Creating a positive transition. We have the Orchard neighborhood, which is a more intensive residential pattern as outlined by the official community plan that surrounds this property to the south, the east, and the west of us. And then Fifth Street kind of becomes this dynamic ground-oriented transition into the commercial center at Bevan and Beacon Avenue that we all know and love. And so the intent of, I believe, this zoning bylaw, as well as the land use designation, is to kind of begin to stagger into that kind of contextual village setting. And that's what I work to do so with this property. As it's been pointed out already, we're working with a floodplain construction, as well as the designated height as outlined within the zoning bylaw. And you'll notice a lot of townhomes within the town of Sydney kind of trying to work with a half-story, 2.5 to 3 stories to try to create something that's attainable and accessible, that's safe from the floodplain standpoint, based on our geotechnical engineers' comments, but also still provides that kind of gentle human scale that we're all looking for, and I think that this project does so. Creating quality open space through the preservation of the pine trees at the front of the property, creating dynamic front yards, as well as obviously a landscape buffer around the perimeter of the property and the neighborhood, the little garden space that we're creating for our tenants through as well. The laneway access, again, following the direction from the town of Sydney, providing a vehicle and active transportation access via the way off of Orchard Avenue. The key OCP guidelines that we talk about here, which I've touched on briefly, is enhancing the streetscapes and public realm through repurposing the sidewalk and creating an accessible and scaled entryway access from the street. Environmental sustainability, working both at step code level 3, as well as ensuring that the homes will not be built with any natural gas as a primary heat source, are two of the key ways we do that. Again, just through materiality and sustainable solar-oriented design is another way, means in which we achieve those objectives and guidelines with the town. General form and character, designing both private and public kind of facing outdoor amenity spaces, working on ensuring that the scale meets the future standard of the town of Sydney, and ensuring that our setbacks are ample enough to create privacy and screening is all necessary. As well, in looking at both this set of guidelines and 25, the neighborhood townhome residential. I know one of the comments from our staff is looking at kind of breaking up the materiality in the side of the building. I agree with the comment, and I've already spoken to Ms. Cumming, our designer, about that. Certainly something that we're going to work to address as we continue to refine this application in making the facade interesting and engaging, while still maintaining the setbacks that we know are important from the town of Sydney standpoint. To walk you briefly through our site layout, you can see I've labeled Fifth Street here, showing the sidewalk that'll be increased from the current kind of town center setting. We have the existing pine trees as well. I'll be adding some pine trees as well. You can see I've noted here where we do have a water service and a sewer service, as well as storm service that'll be accessed via the street. That plus maintaining and enhancing landscaping is part of one of the reasons why I've asked for a variance for the stairway at the entry of the properties. We could have tried to terrace the landscape and do something on a bit more of a slope, but in order to support and kind of maneuver around the existing trees and not negatively impact them, we did decide to ask for that variance in order to do that. As well, it's a function of the slightly higher flood construction level. You can see that we've gone with a more naturalized setting setback along the south side of the property to take advantage of that sunlight and access to solar quality. But then on the north side of the property, where we're also closer to the town center, we've gone with a more hardscape and accessible pathway that will bring people to the backyard if they're taking Fifth Street. From the laneway, you can see that we also have stairs that go up to the property. So the townhouses are accessed. The second level access is both from the front yard and the rear yard. And then under those stairwells, there's just gentle ramped entryways that bring you into the lower level units. We do have 8 parking stalls, so we do meet the parking bylaw. That being said, we do have and we are also meeting the parking lot or parking stall size requirements within the town's bylaw. One moment, please. Sorry, one second. I'm just getting a note here that. Sorry, my battery was dying. So we meet the parking stall layout requirements, and one of the updates that were made to the plan recently was just looking at drive aisle maneuverability. Initially, we had a 7-meter drive aisle with the parking stalls placed kind of in the similar fashion that you see today. Engineering required a more conservative width drive aisle, which then required the further variances along the rear yard parking access. I will offer that, Saanich and other municipalities are fine with a 7-meter wide drive aisle, but again, I think that it's just a matter of maneuverability and comfort with something that was sought here in the layout. So we did go to expand the variances requested in order to satisfy the turning radiuses, et cetera, that Sydney Engineering were asking for. So we do have an accessible parking layout. We have 2 small car stalls that meet the bylaw requirements from the town. The remainder of them are larger parking stalls. And then as was mentioned before, we've maintained the existing shed that's on the property today. We're relocating it to the rear, and it's kind of a current trend, I guess, we see called a bike and bin storage area. So it would include both the bicycle stall parking for the upper unit, so you're not having to take them up a set of stairs into your home. As well, it would include the recycling and refuse as well for the occupants. Ground level here, you can see we have two bedroom units on the exterior of the building, taking advantage of the light access from the laneway. Access for all of these homes is from the rear yard parking area, and then you can see a modest living space in the front, and a second bedroom off along the side of the building, and then a larger bedroom with a bathroom off of it, closer to the front of the home. The interior units meet the accessibility requirements for the town of Sydney in looking at the turnaround radiuses required for both bathrooms, kitchen access, kitchen heights, as well as in the bedrooms. So those are 1 bedroom in the interior of the property, but every home maintains the same width, so it creates that kind of rhythm from a unit layout and a streetscape standpoint. I'll also just add before I move on, each of these should have bike parking available under the upper deck for the upper unit, as well. It can be a refuse and recycling storage area that's covered under the stairwell. The second floor, which is the primary area for house units, it's a large open concept layout, provides a nice kitchen space, family room and dining room area, as well a powder room and your stairs that take you up to the upper level. Again, just pointing out that there is access for each of these homes, both from the rear laneway where your parking and bike parking is, as well from the 5th Street, from the 5th Street stairs as well. The upper floor here, you can see we have one larger bedroom with a modest ensuite, one 3-piece bathroom that's accessed for the other 2 bedrooms, and then there's, whether it's called a den or a second bedroom that's more internal to the layout, and then a second bedroom as well accessed. So again, it's a repetitive plan. In the first set that we had proposed with the town of Sydney, we actually had a bump out on this level just to give the bedrooms and those interior bedrooms a little bit more breathing space because they are quite modest. That being said, and I'm speaking from experience here, obviously, as somebody with young kids, I think that one thing that I've noticed in Sydney recently is a number of these townhomes that we see only have 2 bedrooms on the upper floor. And I believe that when you're trying to, looking at from a family standpoint at a home, I think having that either the den or third bedroom or what have you, I do think it's an important quality, and that's one of the main kind of influencers for the side yard setback variance that I'll touch on next. Just really quickly going through the design iterations. Sydney did initially indicate that the side yard setbacks needed to be increased. I will point out the previous RM5 zone had a 1.5 meter side yard setback. The new RM5 zone has a 2 meter side yard setback. So we have eliminated the bump outs in this iteration of the plan. We still have a minor variance here along the side yards, but it is decreased from the initial iteration that we had presented to council, and I believe it has satisfied council's request or direction. And of course, I look forward to feedback on that from your design committee. The second one is the height variance and overlooking with existing neighbors. One of the things obviously we wanted to do is just make sure while we are getting a height variance by and large to support the recommendations of our geotechnical engineer in the flood construction level, we did want to make sure that scale and overlook and everything were still being considered. So the previous iteration had a pitched roof, and we've gone to a flat roof instead in this design. It's a more modern aesthetic. I think it fits the general kind of character when you look at other townhouses and other buildings that are both being built and are forming within this neighborhood as well. It just further goes to help reduce the impact and kind of feeling of overlook relative to our property to our neighbors. Concern over vehicle parking and stall access on the rear laneway. Again, further parking setback variances, we were able to maintain both the standard parking stall widths as well as increasing the laneway access to the 7.5 meters that I had mentioned, as well ensuring that there's adequate bike and refuse storage area. This was something that came up loud and clear through deliberations with Sydney Council. They wanted to make sure that this didn't become an issue for a future strata, tenants, or the neighborhood. So we have both increased on-site bike parking areas, as well as we enhance that. We're going to expand the roof line of that the storage shed that's currently on the property and trying to salvage it to further expand the storage and refuse area. So just looking at the building now, here's the, and you all have these in your packages, so I won't dwell on this very long, but this would be looking at the building from 5th Street. You can see that we have, decent, desirable size windows in the bottom garden level for those homes that are at grade. We have those stairwells that take up now to the second level kind of front entry porch. The front entry doors are just off to the side there near the center of the building. And then, of course, go up to the second floor. And again, we're really working with the roof lines and the pitch to create a more scaled approach to this building. You can see now looking west from the rear parking lot, again, similar layout. And you can see that we're working to gently slope the grade so that it's accessible and easily accessed for those rear homes. And there's no requirement for stairs or anything else. It's just a gentle ramp from the parking area or bike parking area down to those lower units. And then the stairwells obviously taking you above. Landscape plan, you can see again, we're maintaining the red stone on the 5th Street sidewalk, the cobble. We also are adding pine trees to the side units, as well as maintaining the pine trees that are existing within the two front homes. As well, we will be including a nice low profile West Coast picket rail fence along the front to create that kind of public-private interface that is talked about within the new design guidelines of the OCP. We do have a nice pathway that takes you, again, as I mentioned, on the north side around the property, using permeable pavers to help manage stormwater on site. As well, we do include, as you can see, hedging throughout the property, as well as some landscaping and trees that, again, create both a visually interesting setback, as well as just kind of make a more gentle transition between our property and the neighbors, while taking advantage of the increased setbacks that we're able to provide on this property. And then again, you can see our bike and bin storage shed there, as well as some raised garden beds that would be an amenity to the future residents on the site on the back the back south corner of the property. The primary variances I'll walk through, and then I'll resign back for feedback or for questions. Building height specifically, it really is a definition of what is considered a story within the town of Sydney, or what's considered a half story. This is a 0.92 meter variance, and again, I'd love to lower it and make it fit in line, but there's two things. One, we're trying to make the gentle grading work in the rear access and not require any stairs, so that it is accessible units at the ground level. And number two, we're working to meet the geotechnical engineer's requirement of the flood construction level. It was asked by the mayor at the council meeting whether or not we could just raise the building so it's all done at natural grade. It could be done, but I also wanted to be mindful of the neighbors and following the technical report in managing the flood construction level. So again, it's one of those balance pieces, and I'd be curious to hear feedback on that from the APC. That being said, I also point out in the Orchard neighborhood, within the traditional neighborhood residential, the new zoning bylaw does include up to 3 stories within a lot of those standard neighborhood residential infill properties. And so this is actually a lower height now than a lot of the ones to the south of us, closer to the water and the more traditional neighborhood. And number two, there's a lot of working examples of this kind of lower unit rental suite kind of example that have successfully been built throughout the Orchard neighborhood. And I feel that this is in keeping with that settlement pattern. Number two, we've grown the proposed side yard setback to 1.68 meters, then just takes us to a modest 0.32 meter variance per side. Again, I feel that this one is really important because we're already building quite narrow homes and still trying to make the parking and the landscaping and everything else work functionally. Going any narrower is really going to close off the ability for that den or that third bedroom to be created on the upper level. And I think from a family housing aspect, even if it's this bedroom, I do feel it's quite important to include that from just a livability and attracting of young families kind of component to the broader housing mix that Sydney is looking at and following the housing needs assessment that has been mandated by the province. As well, the parking stall distance from the driveway, again, that's just making that 7.5 laneway work. And of course, we've landscaped that a lot to help ensure that we're not having any negative impacts on our neighbors. As well, we'll be including a solid cedar fence around the property as well that'll help manage any visual impact of the vehicles being parked in the rear yard. And then, of course, the entryway stairwells. I'm not going to beat on this again. Basically, the entryway stairwells are both making the floodplain construction level work, as well ensuring that we're not overgrading the front property 5th Street to manage the existing sidewalk placement, as well ensure that we don't negatively impact those front pine trees that are existing on the property and bringing on any additional soil. So those are the key variances being requested. That's it for my presentation. I'll stop screen sharing, but I do have my presentation available here, so we can always flip to a specific slide if somebody has a question or a comment they'd like to provide.
Okay, thank you. Members of the committee, does anyone have any technical or other questions of the proponent?
Maybe a quick one. Just want to confirm. So I understand that the lower units are accessible and the upper units are not accessible, correct?
So 2 of the 4 units on the lower level are accessible. So the 2 center units, because they don't have that small second bedroom, they meet the town's requirements for accessibility. The 2 exterior units, because I was able to fit a side bedroom within there, they do not meet it. I will say the accessibility requirements are a function of the town zoning bylaw, and I do meet the requirements within the town zoning bylaw. But yes, because of the stairwells and the fact that I wasn't able to supply commercial elevators to the upper levels of those townhouse units above, those would not be accessible either, to answer your question.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask about the flood construction level?
Yeah.
I watched the video of the discussion of this at Sydney Town Council. And in that, in the conversation there, I thought that I heard that there was a flood construction level of 4.35 meters that was determined by the engineer, and that the lower floor in this building will be at 2.79 meters. And in fact, you'll be cutting back from the lane toward the building, and then there will be like a linear drain before you hit those lower levels.
Yeah.
So those lower units, I just wanted to clarify, is that correct? Is the flood construction level 4.35 and is the lower floor level 2.79?
That is in line with the geotech report. I should start by qualifying. I'm not a geotechnical engineer, so I did. But basically, when we first started planning for this project, I gave my, like, it's RISEC geotechnical, and they're kind of the primary, for the town. They worked on the project that was referenced earlier at Orchard and Fifth, and they're very familiar with the flood and the soil conditions in the area. I gave them the town's zoning bylaw that says that you should have 2.5 levels of height, and then I gave them the kind of the preliminary layout that we were working on. At that point, the question really to them was, can we do this in 2.5 levels, or do we need to request a further variance and go up to 3, or is it something even totally different where we're floating on a crawl space or something like that to make it work? The 2 big impacts to geotech on sites like this is, how does the load of the property get handled within the specific soil conditions to support the building that you're proposing based on the structure? And then number 2, how do you safely manage the habitability of the homes based on the flood construction level? And so, because we are below flood construction level, the placement of our building relative to the municipal infrastructure is really important. And then how water on site gets managed to the perimeter of the property and then retained on site before it goes to the municipal infrastructure is also very important. So through working with our geotech engineer and our civil engineer, we felt that the perimeter drain through both a French drain at the rear slope, as you mentioned, of the property, as well as ensuring that the height of the lower units, the garden units, if you will, is still higher than the municipal infrastructure, should very adequately ensure that we're not creating any habitability challenges for construction in this specific location. And that's why they signed off on the heights as presented in the report.
In the case of like a massive flood in Sydney, where we actually hit those king tide floods, then we would expect, however, there would be water in these lower units.
Based on the feedback I've received from the geotechnical engineer, I don't think that risk is likely. But risk is one of those things that does follow on a spectrum. So I'm not saying it would never ever happen, but they felt that there would be a lot of other properties that would have issues before this one would, in the event of a massive, 200-year event.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you for your presentation, and stand by. We've got another one coming in a little while.
That's right.
Okay. So, members of the committee, do you have any observations, comments, questions, further questions, or what do you think of this proposal? Why don't we go around the table? Why don't we start? Todd, do you have any? Yeah, sure.
I mean, overall, I think it's pretty amazing that they were able to fit 8 units into the provided space, which is the whole purpose of everything that was done with Bill 44. And obviously there's going to have to be some variances here and there to squeak things out. I don't think any of the variances that are being asked for seem too strenuous. Considering, like if you go higher, you're going to have more stairs. If you get rid of the shed, you won't be able to reuse the shed that's nice and whatnot. The only thing I wondered where the garden boxes go. It seems like there's a whole bunch of trees there that are on the neighbor's property. So it seems like that area might be quite shaded. And with no sort of outdoor other patio area, I love garden boxes. I'm a huge gardener, but if there's no sun, things won't grow in them. And I wonder if maybe a communal patio area might be a better use of the area. But other than that, I think it's quite brilliant.
Indeed.
I'm also impressed by the number of units that were fit onto this property. I, on the other hand, think that it might be a little bit overdeveloped for the amount of land that's actually there. As you might have gathered from the question that I asked, I do have a big concern about cutting the natural grade down further and sloping the entire parking area towards those lower units. Like when we look at the numbers for these flood construction levels, it seems that those lower units would be 1.56 below the flood control level. And like that's 5 feet. And I'm concerned about that. I would rather, if we were looking at a project like this, that the projects are raised so that those lower level units end up above or at flood control levels rather than below them. Because I think for the future, we're just asking for trouble in the town if we start cutting down in these areas where we know there can be excess water in the future. Besides that, also the side yard setbacks. The side yard setbacks were the new zoning bylaw that's just been approved by the town is asking for minimum 2-meter side yard setbacks in this area. And I'm also concerned that the first project we get already, people are trying to narrow the side yards further. In this whole area, in Orchard area generally, the densities on the land are growing and all of the setbacks are shrinking. And I don't know if anyone has had a discussion or not with the fire department, but I am concerned that in the longer term, we're going to have a larger building load on this land than what any town has been used to in the past, and that we might have issues coming from that. And so I would support not increasing the side yard setback, not allowing smaller side yard setbacks. I think we should be sticking with what we currently have just put in place. I also have a further question or concern for this group as well. In past townhouse projects that we've had, we've looked at having common amenity spaces. And I don't see any, a lot of green space in here other than the planter boxes. And when I look at the recently adopted official community plan, the requirement there for common amenity spaces for townhouses is 10% of the total site area. And I don't think we're really getting a lot of amenity space. It's probably less than 5%. And I also noted in the report from the town, the impact of vehicle headlights from people coming into the parking area in the back, particularly in the 2 central units. And we've had that as well previously on other town housing sites. And I'm also concerned about that in terms of those lights hitting those people's, they only have 2 windows in their units, one where their kitchen is, one on the other side where their bedroom is. And basically anytime after dark, they're going to be hit by swinging vehicle headlights coming into that parking area. So that's a further concern. And like I said earlier, I just think maybe the density of this development may be a bit much for the actual area of the land. I know we're going to be looking at another development from the same group, which to me seems really great in terms of the amount of green space and all of that we get. On this one, I feel like, wow, it's just like you got to pack in those 8 parking spaces and pack in 8 units on the land. And if you're doing that, you're not going to end up with any green space. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay,
Thanks.
why don't we go to Zoom, Lucina?
Excellent. I'm glad I'm following Bernadine because some of my comments echo her thoughts on this. So my biggest concern with this project is the livability of those 2 interior lower units. The window, there's only 2 windows in the unit and 1 window is behind the stairs that faces the rear parking lot. And the 4-foot wide patio to me doesn't present any opportunity for private outdoor space for these people. When it's below grade, you're looking through a parking lot and there's a heat pump there. So I believe Todd touched on this also. Perhaps that garden space could be a patio area because even the upper units, they do not have any outdoor space. There's no connection to the exterior. I don't find the front yard suitable opportunity for families to use outdoor space. So overall, that's my big concern with this project is the lack of open space or amenity space on the project, but especially with those 2 lower units. And in terms of the setbacks, I think the north setback of 2 meters should be respected for the neighbor. The south one, I don't have as much of a concern because the corner lot there can be redeveloped, but that person will be looking at, on the north side, will be looking at an imposing building. And I think the 2 meter is absolute minimum that you should expect for that lot line. And I think that's my main thoughts. Thank you.
Is Harold on? Does Harold have any comments?
Yeah. I yeah, just briefly, I think it definitely is a very compact design. It's attractive, and I like the fact that it has a flat roof. I think that provides more opportunity for solar paneling, which are very strongly now promoted by both levels, federal and provincial governments, and we'll probably see more of those. I don't think I have any problem with the variances. I think they are not unreasonable. And obviously we could try to get them to comply in one way or another, but overall I think it would be acceptable to me under those circumstances. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kim?
I am in agreement with Bernadine and Lucinia. It's this is project is elbowing itself into the into the site too much. It's over height, it's over width. It's the height is mitigated by having it as a flat roof, but then it becomes a little more dominant of a building and just like a block. It's dissociated from the street by the at least sort of 1 story, close to 1 story of steep steps. And then it's also dissociated for the rear units to through stairwells up through the rear to the other units. The project is well into the bonus density area. I think that this is if it was brought back into the normal density of the townhouse development, then it would be more in keeping with the connection and then also in respecting the limitations of the flood control limit elevation. I am concerned. I didn't realize that the elevation of the lowest floors is so much reduced from what the flood level would be at 2.79 meters rather than 4.35. I think that's a significant issue, despite access to perimeter tiles. And when we saw the November 2021 floods into Sydney, it was acknowledged that the Sydney municipal systems are not adequate to deal with those types of rain events, and that there was significant flooding of the streets at that time. So I would be very concerned about that. So in essence, this site and the lower floor is not respecting that flood level. I also think that with the approval of the new zoning bylaw, that it would make a significant message to both the community and the development community that variances are readily accepted to something that has already been adapted to the provincial guidelines, and I think that there was some balance in making those provisions. I think also that that the whole aspect of variance is where an owner is seeking relief from a bylaw that is creating undue hardship. But in this case, the flood level was well known by the developer. It should be respected. It may not justify 8 units on the site, but it could easily provide for 4 or 6, possibly. I don't know. This is at something like 43 units to the acre. That's a significant density for this development. I also think that for 5th Street as the main entry into Sydney, that it needs to have buildings of quality and something that's inviting and that has architectural interest, and I don't see that this building has that. So I would discourage this project.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Clarence. I might be unpopular here, but I understand where the developer coming from. Where I think we're trying to maximize amount of units, and I heard that this project might be a purpose built rental. I am all for maximizing the amount of units. I think this is needed. I understand that 4 and 8 is not a huge scale, but I would think that trying to maximize where we can would not be wrong. I hear from what I'm seeing, this was well thought out project. They put a lot of thought into this. It's quite obvious. I respectfully disagree with Kim on the design aspect. I find this particular building would be actually very well suited Fifth Avenue. You know, the kind of townhouse feel is, excuse me, where we're going with Sydney. It's townhouses are the thing now, and I think it's a development that provides you with a home rather than sort of apartment. And I understand there are some of the smaller apartments here, but I think appearance is fine here. Yeah, regarding flood level, I just wanted to mention that I think we should leave it to geotech engineer. If this been recommended, approved, et cetera, by geotech engineer, I would not have any concerns with that myself personally. I'm not a geotech engineer, and I trust the professionals. Sorry, I had a note here. What else? In terms of variances, again, this is something to be decided not by us. I think there are quite a lot of variances. They're not too concerning to me. Perhaps I would agree with the north setback. It potentially would be nice that it's left as is. However, again, it will be decided at a different level. And other than that, I think, and again, remember, I think Lucina made a point regarding the headlights. I don't know about that either. I mean, eight parking spots. How many vehicles can drive in at night? I don't see it as a concern. I'd rather have people somewhere to live than don't have anything. So yeah, that's all for me.
Eric.
I think overall the project looks really good. I don't have any particular issue with the side setbacks. The issue of height in the floodplain, I think, is a potential issue, but I mean, let's all remember that the height requirement is an artificial construct of the town, and so raising it up and making the basement or the floor level of those lower units at the floodplain is that would actually, as now pointed out, it would put those front stairs like right into those trees, and it would also increase the number of stairs at the back, and also increase the amount of buildup that they would have to do in order to get this thing out of the floodplain. So I struggle a little bit with that. But yeah, I don't have a problem if they needed to go higher. I wouldn't have an issue with that. As for the overall form and character of it, knowing what I know about the housing situation here on the Saanich Peninsula, I think 8 units is fine. And yeah, no, I think well done overall. And I think if we can address the floodplain issue, I think it'll be a welcome addition to the town. Thank you.
Okay, I have some comments as well, and I don't want to repeat what everyone said, but I share concern with a number of my fellow panel members or commission members. And the really big one is that we've just finished a zoning bylaw, and the zoning bylaw went through a rigorous process to determine what's appropriate in different areas in the municipality. And the first proposal that comes in to the APC has 6 variances, not just 1 or 2, but 6 variances. And my understanding of a variance, I've been on boards of variance in 3 municipalities, and the idea of hardship is a fundamental criteria when looking at variances. And I see the hardships here largely the product of design. And so you want to design, you want to fit something into an area, and you've created hardships. So I'm not disagreeing with the need for housing, with the need for maximizing the spaces and all of that. But having said that, we also have a fundamental value of green space, community amenities, and public areas. And those problems have been pointed out in this proposal already, so I don't want to reiterate or repeat those. I am concerned also about setbacks, and the shrinking setbacks that we're seeing create problems in a lot of areas, fire hazard being another one of them, but it just closes things in on us. Overdensity for this period of land, I agree with that perspective as well. And 8 units is not necessarily what has to be done. Could be 6, or it could be a different configuration with suites. There's all sorts of different things that can be done. The design led to the need for these variances, and I'm not happy with the idea of passing that many variances. And the height is 10% beyond, is 10%, which is a fair number. Anyway, so I won't repeat some of the other things, but we can, we'll deal with that when we come to the recommendations. The other thing is the form and character element of the OCP. Under section 25.2, the justification for form and character, it's not in the staff report. So I went to the OCP itself. The justification section, I think it's page 109 or 110, talks about the form and character guidelines ensure that new construction responds positively to existing development, contributes to the character and identity of Sydney and its neighborhood. And I respectfully disagree that this building fits within that neighborhood. Look across the street. That's not the kind of building that you're seeing across the street. And I looked at the building, and my opinion, it's just a big square box. And we've got a big square box sitting at 5th and Orchard, and 5 of the 6 units haven't sold yet, and they're not selling. That's not my problem. But the problem is that the aesthetics of the building are an issue. And then site design 25.3.4, develop in a manner compatible with adjacent structures and uses. This one will be an outlier. And I guess you could make the argument that eventually the neighborhood will look like that, but the neighborhood doesn't look like that right now. So it is an outlier. And unless we've got an overall design for the neighborhood, which makes this compatible with what's being designed in the neighborhood, I see this as something that's not appropriate. Building design 25.3.24, integrate new developments with the existing neighborhood by considering the transition between building heights and massing paying attention to building elevations visible from the public realm, streetscapes, and so forth. And I think on this level too, it's got some issues. And finally, just one last issue. A lot of this was oriented towards the 2 pine trees along the road. Those trees really look stressed, and I'd be worried about their survival. They're not native species, and with construction, I'd be really concerned that those trees will survive. And so it would seem ironic that we've oriented the development of the property to trees that may not survive. It's an issue that I think we don't know for sure what's going to happen to those trees, but they do not look happy. Okay, that's all I'll have to say. Okay, the process next is we have staff recommendations, and we can go about this in a number of ways. The first recommendation, which is about notification of the development variance application, that would be to notify properties in the area, and the recommendation states the 6 variances. My suggestion is that we have motions from the panel for each of the variances. We could do it as a package if you want to do it that way, or we could simply say, do one at a time. In other words, with respect to development permit application, such and such, the first motion would be to increase the maximum building height from 8 to 8.92 meters. We could do that separately, or we could do them as a package. My feeling of doing them separately is that that would give staff, would give council an indication of where the committee felt on it. And if they all pass, fine, then we go on to the recommendation number 1. If they don't all pass, recommendation number 1 becomes redundant. And then we don't have to
well, some of them pass. It's pertinent.
Pardon me?
If some of them pass, the recommendation 1 retains its pertinence. So I'm not suggesting what you put forward is not a reasonable path forward. And let me just yield to staff on this suggestion, because I think we've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, staff, APC perhaps look, I don't like the wording discourage a project, but I look to where you could see it improve and make a recommendation that the applicant consider the following improvements to the project, and perhaps return to APC. Recommendation be to come back to APC prior to going to council those on a second occasion. So I'll yield to staff and see if my memory is correct that we've done that in the past.
Sure, there's a number of things that have happened in the past. Sometimes APC will make a motion that the applicant redesign the following elements and come back to APC. Sometimes they're recommending to council that the applicant redesign these things before a variance notice is done. Considering the variances 1 by 1, that's an idea. You can do that. The wording that's in here is formulated in a way that meets our legislative requirements about notification area and the process of things. So there are elements in that do need to be in the recommendation. There's nothing wrong with considering each variance individually rather than as a package, but it will depend on what APC members propose, move in second. So there's just a number of ways to do it.
Yes. Okay, and there's this point as well, that this is only the APC saying this. Council doesn't have to listen to the APC. In other
Council
words,
will make they'll consider APC's recommendation and then make a resolution.
and they could then, if they want to, modify the development variance permit accordingly. If they see that on the basis of APC comments, they may want to make some alterations, and staff, of course, would obviously guide them in how that would be done.
That's right. It's up to council to decide what to do with APC's recommendation.
Yes. Okay. So, and I guess to draw a fine point on this, we could make whatever recommendation we want, and we don't have to make the recommendations on this sheet. That's not relevant to the discussion, really, because council has the ability and if they have the desire to pass what they want, the APC simply advises them as to what it considers.
Well, but I agree, but let's try and operate on the basis that the recommendations as pointed out by staff sort of meet some of the statutory requirements that staff have to bring this forward. And so I think as closely aligned as you can, and you heard staff concur that dealing with the variances one at a time is acceptable. I also concur that I don't think there's a problem with addressing recommendation one last at the end of the process, because some of these items you may not be recommending go out for notification, and others you may. But I would ask that you generally follow the process that staff recommend. Otherwise, I think these meetings could be in great peril of running great durations of time if there's not a routine process and function that we're following. And that's why staff are here, is to help keep the group and myself on track with what comes forward to council.
Okay, this is worth a discussion, and it would be worth a future discussion as well. Okay, so what is the feeling of members of the committee? Do you want to do one recommendation at a time?
You know what, just from having listened to everybody, I think we're just about split in half as a commission. And I think it would be really valuable to everybody if we just discuss each of, like you suggested, Clarence, each of the variances individually, just to get an overview feeling, because there's certain ones that I kind of support. There's other ones that I'm really dead against. And there's probably people here who support all of them. So it might be good to kind of get a flavor of how do we sit on each of the variances.
Well, a motion on each one of them, take care of that without a large discussion, because I think we're already there in terms of having discussed them.
Oh, well, I'll just say, for example, although there is a height variance here suggested, I don't have a problem with the height variance because of all the changes that have been made in the neighborhood around us. The height variances for R1 lots have gone up much higher than the proposed height for this particular project. So that's something that I think, okay, if the building were actually to move up and it was actually moving up out of the ground and out of the flood zone, that to me would be a positive thing. But on the other hand, the side yard setbacks, I am very much feeling that I don't want to see those varied.
So with that in mind, we would be moving, for example, that APC recommend council that the height variance be approved.
Yes, for example.
I'd just like to point out, though, that in the R1 zone, that the third story is 60% or 65% of
Yes.
of the floor area of the lower floors.
Yeah.
And so this
is something else.
This is something else, because you are getting an awful lot of shading from a block.
Yeah.
You're not getting that
No.
setback and so you're also getting the overlook.
Yeah.
So I disagree that
I hear what you're saying. And you're right, Kim.
What I would like for each one of these, a motion to pass the variance, then we can vote on them one at a time.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Following that, if APC wants to make a motion on each of the variances to see what is the consensus on that variance, may then, like, for example, say there were 3 variances that the group was all in favor of, then you restructure staff recommendation number 1 and put those 3 variances into that one, that all owners and tenants within 75 meters of, etc., and put in the number of variances that APC is in support of into that section.
Oh, yeah.
And then continue on. So that motion is made in that structure of the order after APC has considered each one individually to see what is the group. And so, something to consider.
I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
We're not actually passing the variances. We're deciding whether we're recommending to pass or not to pass.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Just wanted to clarify that.
And if it comes to pass that APC finds that there's variances that the group is not in favor of, then APC could consider making a motion to council recommending denial of variances X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Just to be clear on what APC is recommending.
Would it be appropriate to simply, rather than do motions, to do a poll among members quickly and just say for each variance? Then
I think
we
so,
could-
because that
then we
gives
could
you
do
latitude to alter the first
Yeah.
Yeah,
recommendation
and it
analysis.
saves the number of votes. and
One by
motions.
one, I think is.
one by one.
Is appropriate.
Yep. Okay, let's do it that way then. And Harold and Lucina, you're on board with this?
Yes, fine with me.
Okay. So the first variance, let's do a straw poll to increase the maximum building height from 8 to 8.92 meters. Who supports that? Just raise your hand. Who's against it? And Harold and Lucina, are you in favor or against?
In favor. I'm in Bernadine's camp on this one.
Okay. Harold?
I'm in favor.
Okay, that one passes. To increase the maximum number of stories from 2.5 to 3, in favor? Opposed? Harold?
In favor.
Okay. To increase the maximum height of stairs permitted to project into a front yard from 1.2 to 1.95 meters. In favor? Opposed? Harold?
In favor.
Okay. To decrease the minimum interior side yard setback from 2 to 1.68 meters. Favor? Opposed? Okay.
What was Harold on that one?
I'm okay.
Okay.
You're in favor.
Yeah, that's the first one that's not passed. To decrease the minimum parking space setback from 1 meter to 0.8 meters. In favor?
I'm in favor.
Okay, everybody is in favor of that one. It's unanimous. To decrease the minimum setback for an accessory building from 1.2 to 0.8 meters. Favor?
In favor.
Okay, that one passes. So which one was the side yard setback? Okay, so we can scratch that one for the first recommendation, correct? And then we can move that motion minus the side yard setback.
May I ask a quick question? Staff? The side yards, I can't get anything to load. The internet sucks. The side yard setback, is that the same for all the different residential zones? It's all at 2 meters. So what are other zones at for the side yard setback?
It depends on zone. So there's a range between, I think, 1.2 meters to 3 meters for interior side
Okay.
setbacks.
So while it's less than what this is zoned for, it's still more than what some other areas are zoned for.
Correct.
That might be in the area,
In the neighborhood, yeah.
in the neighborhood, and in the previous zoning, it was
It was previously 1.5.
1.5. So it's more than it was before, and more than it is in some other areas. Okay.
Yeah, there's some zero lot lines in some places in town. Okay, so we can go ahead with the recommendations. And the first recommendation, minus the minimum interior sideline lot line setback. Okay, so does somebody want, pardon?
Should we have somebody read it out?
Yeah, somebody should read
You
it.
need a mover.
Pardon?
You need an actual mover from the rest of this.
An
Yeah,
actual
you know,
somebody
it
read it out.
is minus that deletion.
I move that owners and tenants in occupation of property within 75 meters, 246 feet of 9667 5th Street be notified regarding development variance application number DV 100358 to relax maximum height, maximum number of stories, minimum setback from a parking space to a property line, maximum height of stairs in the front yard area, and minimum setback of an accessory building, and that any written correspondence received be forwarded to council at the time of consideration of approval of the variance.
Okay, a seconder,
I can
Bernadine,
Harold.
Harold, okay?
Yeah.
Call the question. Is there a discussion on this? Okay, we've made the discussion. Call the question, all in favor?
yes,
Oh, all in favor, raise your hands.
yes,
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Second, the development permit application form now. Somebody want to read that motion?
I can move that one.
Okay,
It's number 2.
that's number 2, yes.
Yes, so I move the developments permit application number DP 100845 to permit the form and character of a 3-story, 8-unit townhouse development for the property at 9667 5th Street be brought before council for consideration of approval if council authorizes the issuance of the development variance permit.
Okay, a seconder?
I'll second
Alex seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? It's 4-4.
Was Harold in favor?
I'm in favor, yeah.
So that's 4-4.
So a tie motion fails. The council
Tied
is at
motion
the same.
fails.
My understanding is it's the same in committee.
Okay,
Okay, but it's still, this is what council receives, and council makes its decision on the basis of its own feeling about the matter, not APC feelings, right? That is an understanding that we have. Now, 3, these are staff recommendations that the staff wanted to see dealt with respect to the building. Does anybody want to read this motion?
Can I ask a question just before we read the motion? I potentially wanted to add some other items to this
Okay.
that were also in the report.
Okay, once the motion is made, you can move an amendment, okay? Yeah.
I can move it.
Okay, Alex, do you want to just say that you want to move it without having to read it, or
Do you want me to read it? I can read it.
do we need it read?
No.
No, okay. You would just move motion recommendation 3.
I'll move that the recommendation 3 of the staff.
Okay, seconder?
Second it.
Eric, seconder. And let me just point out that these, a number of these are pro forma things that would be done regardless of
Correct.
whether the APC votes on them or not, like the flood hazard covenant, for example, restrictive covenant, etc. Okay. Discussion. Bernadine, you had.
Yeah, I was interested in adding to this address design guideline 25624 to provide a minimum of 10% of total site area to common amenity space being added.
Okay.
And also,
So do you want to do one at a time for the purpose of
Okay,
voting on it?
25, which?
it was design guideline 25624.
Okay.
Are we able to discuss the proposed amendment?
Okay, is there a seconder to the amendment?
I'll second it.
Seconder.
Okay.
Christina.
Kellen did first. Okay, discussion.
I guess my question is, do we know that it's less than 10%? Because there's a patio, there's a accessory building. I mean, I'm a land surveyor, but I can't calculate it that quickly. Do we know what the percentage of public amenity space in this proposal? Like, do we know that it's less than 10%?
I was looking at the public amenity space as the garden area,
But
essentially. And,
accessory building is considered.
well, the
public
accessory
amenity.
building is where the recycling and garbage is. We had
Yeah.
another project where somebody suggested that garbage and recycling should be part of public amenity space. And yeah, I can hear Lucina laughing because we weren't really in favor of that.
Yeah, but it's not what we think, it's what the definition of public amenity is.
Ah, okay.
I just don't know. That's why I'm raising the question. What is the public amenity? And I'm don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
Bernadine, I'm in favor of what you're saying.
I hear
I
you.
just want to make sure that we're recommending something that makes sense rather than it is
So-
being addressed and we're still doing it, right?
Can would it be appropriate for me to read out what the actual
support of your
design
motion,
guideline
absolutely.
says?
Yeah.
So 25.624 says, provide a minimum of 10% of the total site area to common outdoor amenity spaces that A, incorporate landscaping, seating, play space, and other elements that encourage gathering or recreation. B, avoid isolated, irregularly shaped areas or areas impacted by parking, mechanical equipment, or servicing areas. And C, also access to solar exposure.
I think that's pretty good. I don't think the garden shed applies there.
Well, I mean, I can garbage area myself, but I agree that not everybody will. It's hard for me to say whether it's 10% or not. Perhaps not. I'm just trying to visually divide it into.
Well, I think maybe that the applicant can come back to council and or APC.
I
And
think if-
demonstrate though
That he has
that he
10%.
has met that criteria.
And I think this is aspirational too. In the end, that this is what you want on the site. And so that you ensure that when the site's developed, that you actually have that.
I mean, if that's in the guideline and it's less than 10%, I'm totally in support of what Karen has to say myself.
Okay, so in favor of the amendment? Everybody in favor? Against? Harold, favor?
Yes.
Sorry.
No, as soon as in favor, she's second.
In favor.
Has to do a revote, 'cause
In favor of the amendment?
Okay,
Amendment, yeah.
I will vote in favor of the amendment.
Yes.
To add that into it.
Okay, do you have a second one?
I did. I also had addressed design guideline 25.6.3, minimize the impact of vehicle headlights on building interiors.
Do you mind reading that one?
Oh, yeah, no problem. I didn't actually, I just saw the abbreviated part that was in the
Yeah.
staff report. But
Is
no.
that
see
the
that you have
full-
it
is that-
ready,
is
so,
that the
no
full
problem.
motion, that just to include?
Yeah.
Yes, we need
Then
to
there should
vote.
be a seconder and then you can read.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Second,
Okay, Lucina,
Okay, 25.6.3.
read, you can read in support of your motion.
Site buildings. Oh, is this the right one? Maybe you can help me out here. I'm looking at 25.6.3, and when I'm looking here, I don't think that's quite 25.6.3. Oh, 23.
Just
Sorry, I said 25.6.3. It's 25.6.23.
23, yeah.
25.6.23, screening, window placement, and the siting of access points should be considered to minimize the impact of vehicle headlights on building interiors.
Okay. That's the motion. We have a motion, seconder. Any discussion?
How high are those windows? You know, like in the center unit, the accessible units? what's the height of the bottom of the window?
Part of the thing is that here's what I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Here's what I think. When you're coming from the lane, you're sloping down
Yeah.
into the parking areas. And those windows are like right in line with the center drive aisle.
I was just thinking, like, if
I
the
think
if
it would not be hidden.
if the cars are pointing down and the like, I don't know whether the window, where's the window so
Yeah.
high,
Yeah.
and if they're accessible units, then the people, if they're in wheelchairs, are they going to be able to see out the window?
Again, the point here is that that the building design and make sure that this doesn't happen.
Yeah, I was
So I
just
think
trying to
that we
figure
wanna
in my
make
head
sure
whether
this-
it's gonna
Yeah.
happen, like whether it will be an issue if the cars are pointing downwards.
Well, it depends on the vehicle too. The variation of heights of headlights on vehicles.
Yeah, that's true.
Again, I like myself personally, I don't see it as an issue. And I think if we're trying to say that it needs to be minimized, it needs to be like that guideline should be considered.
Yep.
I have no problem with that.
That's the point.
With that thing, but I just personally don't see in this particular case, I don't see an issue with it being 8 parking stalls. To me, it's not going to be high
It's not a big
traffic.
deal.
Okay, but that's still.
So you should vote against that.
No, but
Okay, let's.
No, I
Let's move on.
agree that if it's an issue that it should be dealt with.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to work it through
In
my
your
head
own
whether logistically it would end up being an issue.
We should move quickly on this because we're
Okay.
running late. I'll call the question on the amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Nobody? Okay. And is that it?
So now you're gonna vote on the motion as amended?
I have one item. I can't make a motion. I can put it out if anybody wants to make the motion. It's 25.3.4 design guideline, develop in a manner compatible with adjacent structures and uses. That's 25.3.4. If anybody wants to move that, if not, then we'll just leave it. Because I can't make a motion as chair.
Are there any uses that are consistent with the current zoning, the revised zoning of the new zone bylaw, or is it all residential as it stands?
It's going to be all residential in that area.
I don't know how you can
Okay.
do
Okay.
that.
We've had the motion put forward, the recommendation, it's been amended. So I call the question on the motion, the recommendation as amended. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's it for this particular one. Do you want to take a 5-minute break?
Did you want to do the
Record of decision.
record decision first, maybe with just a quick
Oh,
4
okay.
bullet
Yeah,
points?
good idea.
We can just record the 4 bullet points. I don't think we have to fine tune it if you're good with that. Chair.
Okay. So I'll make some observations and you can tell me if I've missed some, okay? Because
Just a second here, I'll share my screen and then we can type it
Okay.
up as we
Yep.
go. And then, okay. There we go. All right.
Okay. With respect to the variances, commission members were divided in their support. Some members felt that the variances were completely appropriate for the site and for our housing needs. Other members felt that the proposal was overdevelopment for the amount of land. There was concern over the flood control levels or flood control development, yeah, levels. Flood construction levels, sorry. Concern over side yard setback that tended to have wide support among commission members. Concern about common amenity areas.
Sorry, there's concern over side yard setbacks.
I don't know if that needs to be in there, to be honest, Chair, because of your motion, it already removed it. And,
Okay.
and so what we're looking in the record of decision based on past precedent is what wasn't picked up in what's been moved. That was maybe a theme that you want to share with council.
Okay.
So I agree with your comment on FCL.
Yeah.
I agree with your opening broad statement. I think you were starting to go towards another item that was addressed in the recommendation. Probably doesn't belong in the record of decision, but carry on.
Do you want to make these 2 bullet points? There was concern over flood construction levels, and there was concern over side yard setbacks. That's one sentence. There was concern over flood construction levels and side yard setbacks, or keep them separate.
Keep them separate.
Okay.
I would agree with Mr. Rintoul here.
Yeah, if we're doing a record of decision, remove the last bullet, because that's already indicated in the motion.
We addressed it.
It was removed as a recommendation. So if we're gonna keep this in keeping with what we've done in the past, we're only addressing items that weren't incorporated into the actual recommendation of council.
Not sure to use the right word. Split support on the massing of the building. Some felt it was overbearing, and others felt it was appropriate. Okay, concerned that 6 variances arose so soon after the zoning bylaw was passed by council.
Split concern.
Pardon?
Split concern.
Split concern, yeah. Okay, the point is there was some concern, yeah, okay, yeah.
Does that capture the essence?
I'd also add perhaps something about poor opinions on design. There were some
Which is that,
poor opinions on design of it.
yeah, yep, design and massing, yeah.
Design, should we clarify design of the building?
Could you maybe just compare, maybe it could be
Like on design aesthetics?
Yes.
split support on the massing and design.
Yeah, you can do
It
that.
could be all the same bullet there.
You
maybe.
can do that.
But we're talking about aesthetic design, not the functional design.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Aesthetics, yeah.
looks.
Yeah.
Not the layout inside.
Yeah.
Okay, that's basically covers. Does anybody else have anything else that they need?
Maybe we should add some positive in there and say that we supported the fact that the accessory building remained.
Was that discussed though? It's supposed to capture the essence of the discussion.
I think it was, but it's okay. I'm used to being ignored, Alice. I understand.
Okay,
I just want to know, I walked down the laneway there today, and behind that accessory building, there was a little stone that said Miffy or something on it like that. So I just want to know what's going to happen with the pet grave when they redevelop it.
okay.
A little
So-
color relief.
We've got all of 15 minutes to deal with another various,
The meetings don't have to end at 4 o'clock. There's no stop time to any of
Right.
these meetings. It's,
I agree, but I think we should take a
But
5 minute
there is
rest.
a 3-hour parking limit across the road. Pardon,
That takes you to 5.
Yeah.
We will go on that.
we have.
Let's take a 5-minute stretch.
I'm gonna leave it recording because Krista will take it out when before she posts the video on the website.
Okay.
So
You want to mute this
fine.
microphone?
Proposal here. Get my papers together here. Same proponent. This is for 2312 Orchard Avenue, development permit and development variance permit application. Would you like to address these as well?
Sure. Thank you, Clarence. So this application is for a 4-unit, 2-story residential development located at 2312 Orchard Avenue. So 3 units are oriented towards the laneway with 1 unit oriented towards Orchard Avenue to the south. Parking for the units will be located within garages with access off the laneway. This application has 2 variances proposed, one to decrease the lot coverage, increase the lot coverage from 50% to 54.2%. And the second to reduce the front yard setback from 4.5 meters to 2.61 meters. I do want to note that this is the first small-scale multi-unit development permit application that we've received to date since the zoning bylaw was updated to reflect the new provincial housing legislation. The style of the building is appears to be generally consistent with the character of the neighborhood. In a traditional style with contemporary accents. The building retains a frontage along the laneway, but also provides street definition and connections to the Orchard Avenue side of the street, in line with the typical single-family dwellings in the neighborhood. One thing staff would like to make note of are the proximity of the large mature trees and their proximity to the proposed development. And there are a few recommendations in the staff report that address our concerns.
Okay, any questions of staff from commission members?
Quick question. So the reason why it's going through development permit application because of the variances, correct?
Property is still within the development permit area, the intensive neighborhood residential.
It is indeed. Okay. Thank you.
Could I ask one question as well?
Sure.
I did read somewhere in the report, and I can't find it right at the moment, but the whole building shifted towards Orchard Avenue. And that's the reason why we have the front yard variance that's being asked for. And somewhere in the staff report, I read that by shifting towards Orchard Avenue, that perhaps there could be some concern with the trees on the boulevard here. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering whether staff had a recommendation about the actual positioning of the building on the property, whether you guys as staff preferred that it be pulled forward, or maybe it should remain further towards the rear property line.
I suppose to answer your question, in the staff report, staff didn't address a preference, whether it's shifted forwards or backwards, but we did want to acknowledge that there's a protected tree in the rear of the property, and there are protected municipal trees at the front of the property on the boulevard.
Mm-hmm. And the decision to shift it forward was because of the trees at the back.
Correct.
Yep.
I could just add to that, that as the staff report says, we did get an arborist report from the applicant assessing the impact of construction and excavation for the construction on the protected root zone of all of these trees. There's protected trees on all 4 sides of this property, north, east across the lane, south on the boulevard, west directly on the other property, and on this property too. So there are a lot of protected trees around this site. So the arborist report looked at that hazard and thought that it could be mitigated. They could minimize the hazard during construction through proper root pruning and arborist monitoring on site. And you'll see in the recommendations that one of the conditions of a development permit is to take a deposit per protected tree located within a certain distance of on the subject property, adjacent properties, and on the municipal boulevard to help ensure that those arborist recommended steps are followed during construction to really try their best to protect these trees during construction. So
Let's see this question.
I just had a question about the loss of a tree potentially on an adjacent property owner by an adjacent property owner. How is that legal?
So the property owner's permission would be required at the time of the tree removal permit.
But that property owner is not sort of residing and giving approval ahead of this committee's review or council's review. So by it potentially their tree that they may not give approval for to be removed, because it actually said to be removed, not protected. Then you're executing that tree without due process.
I do hear what you're saying. I suppose the reason behind that is, or not addressing it at this stage, is that property owners can change hands. So if this application were approved, it would still require certain other permits, such as a building permit and a tree removal permit, and that all takes time. So the property owners might change between now and then, and they might change their decision as well.
Okay.
and if that property owner does not give their approval, then that's a civil issue between these two property owners. And if it affects the design, then they'd have to go through a DP amendment application to change the design of the building in a way that doesn't require that tree cover.
Thank you.
Lucina?
Yeah, two questions for staff. One, I don't have the zoning bylaw with me, but the lane, I'm not sure why this is side interior. Why isn't it a side exterior lot line? So it'd be 2 meters versus 3 meters. It's not interior to 2 lots. It's obviously onto public right of way. So I thought a higher setback would be required.
I don't have the zoning bylaw in front of me at this time, but I believe the zoning bylaw definition for an interior side yard does include a laneway.
Yeah. So the report is correct that it is 1.2, or what it says in the report is correct. It's not considered an exterior side to a lane.
Oh.
That's consistent across the Orchard neighborhood.
So the other question on the lane, because we'll probably see more of these, if this was on the street, you wouldn't be permitted for individual access to the garage, but on a lane, this is permissible.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pelletier.
Thank you. One moment, please.
Go ahead with you. Ready for your presentation?
Yeah, just queuing it up. Yeah, so I guess I'll just start by saying I appreciate the time and feedback from members of this commission. Goes without saying, but and as volunteers, I appreciate the thoughtful feedback that goes into everything. I also think it's just important to qualify the feedback and the iterations that come to build these plans have been with careful review by both myself and my professionals, as well as through working with staff over months and months and months as we develop these plans and refine them. And I appreciate the opportunity to present this second application with you all. My goal today is again to go over context, the design guideline principles from the updated official community plan, the planning rationale, layout, landscape plan, and then a review of the 2 key variances. The property is a 5,500 square foot lot, vacant lot on Orchard Avenue. It's within the intensive neighborhood residential, and it is zoned R1. Yes, that means it can go up to 3 stories as the new ground-oriented intensive residential zone under Bill 44. Applicable development permit area policies include public realm and open space, environmental sustainability, general form and character, as well intensive neighborhood residential. It was important to me, as I think was highlighted a number of times during the previous applications discussion, to maintain 2-level housing, despite the fact that it was mentioned to me that the future form and character of this neighborhood would be changing, and there will be up to 3 stories in this area. I felt that being a transitional zone and a property so close to the adjacent roadways and other uses such as the public works yard, it was important to maintain a 2-level height, especially considering the fact that next door to me is a 1-story building. There's a lot of trees on the property, as was already mentioned. I think 2 things that's important here in the second design principle, which is protecting trees, to highlight, as has always already come up in the discussion. 1, I have the adjacent neighbors' support for the removal of that 1 tree. Number 2, this project has been vetted by both my project arborist that I hired privately, as well as the town of Sydney's private arborist. The movements and specifically the variance that's being sought is intended to best maintain the protected trees at the back, as well as provide adequate relief between this property and the adjacent property to the north, as well acknowledging the fact that Orchard Avenue has an extremely large streetscape size, width. And I would imagine that a lot of the other properties on Orchard, if they were under today's zoning bylaw, would have required front yard variances as well, because they're also quite close to the street, which means that the variance is also helping make sure that we're following the kind of current established settlement pattern along that street. Again, something that's really important to me and will be a challenge on going forward, I think, is working within the general context of the zoning bylaw to still maintain a family-friendly design. And what that means to me is maintaining 3 habitable rooms on the second floor above the ground floor living area. The part of the reason I'm requesting a modest variance on site coverage is because I do feel it's really important to have 3 bedrooms on 1 floor when you're building a house that's going to be designed for young families moving to the neighborhood, as is the intent of the zoning, one of the intents of the new zoning bylaw. Connecting with the outdoors, the other thing that this 2-level does is that you see, 3-story townhouses in different examples where you have a living space on the second floor. The advantage this design gives you is that you have a sliding door at grade that then steps out to the west-facing landscape patio area. So it allows for a modest yet substantial living space within the rear yard, which would be a benefit to each of the homeowners and still provide privacy screening with the fact that we are providing fencing, we are providing hedging, and we are providing obviously the maintenance of maintaining a lot of existing trees, a lot of trees that under the previous land use bylaw, when it was 2 single-family houses proposed on this property, were not going to be maintained at the same degree that they are in this current plan. Secondly, or lastly, is responding to the neighborhood. As I mentioned before, the goal here is really to come up with something that meets the new zoning bylaw, but still provides adequate context for the site. go through the public realm and open space objectives, environmental sustainability, same as the previous project, no natural gas, and building to step code level 3 of the residential building code. The general form and character, I believe we meet that thoroughly, and happy to discuss that further if any questions come up. As well, intensive neighborhood infill. We did look at what a 3-story on 60% of the property would look like as a means to shrink the lot size and get to the 50% coverage. It really negatively impacts the livability of these homes as well. Going up to 3 stories, I feel, is just a bit out of place in this specific location, so far set away from the main access at 5th Street. And so we do feel that we do meet a lot of those existing character guidelines from the intensive neighborhood residential context. Here's an example of our site plan showing each of the homes. Again, with entrances accessed off the laneway, new trees being planted along the laneway. We did go and ensure that the turning radius along the laneway would be adequate for vehicles coming in and out of each home. As well, we reoriented Unit A so that it actually has a front road kind of sequence addressing Orchard Avenue, so that shows a sense of entry and meets some of the arrival and public-private kind of components of the OCP guidelines, while the other homes all have pure addresses kind of coming off of the laneway. You can see that again here on the main floor layout, where we have our main access on the Orchard Avenue side, and then the 3 other units are accessed via the laneway, with a powder room, access to the garage, and then a modest scale living space available, again with those west facing windows facing the backyard over the kitchen and dining area. The second floor layout shows a master bedroom with a room for some sort of small modest office or storage. We have a ensuite here available with a modest 3-piece. As well, the laundry room is on the upper level, which is a convenient amenity for new homeowners. As well, the 2 bedrooms here each put a modest size room for a 3-bedroom layout. As well, they have their own 3-piece primary bathroom. One thing I'll add is that we have looked at possible access to an attic space. The higher roof line allows for that, and one of the comments that came up at the committee meeting with council was the need for creating storage space. And my preference here, just because of the building design, would be to look to an attic storage as opposed to creating a crawl space for storage. And so that was one thing that we can add, subject to feedback. Here's the front or side elevation, depending on how you term it, looking at the property from the laneway, looking west. Here's the rear elevation, looking at the property from the west side, looking east towards the laneway. You can see each of the little living room areas that would be walking out from a sliding glass door out to the rear yard, and the bump outs from the upper bedrooms provide a nice sheltered area over each of those entryways. The interior south-facing side, we reduced the number of windows just to respect overlook to the neighbors. And it is a staircase along that wall on the interior south-facing side, so it's not like they're missing a ton on that side. However, on the orchard-facing side, we've maintained a number of windows looking out towards those bedrooms and the main living space, just to create that more engaging front yard realm. And I should add the blank space there, that is a staircase as well. But it's also, there's a large tree that we're protecting within the boulevard in that location. And so the need to have an additional window there is less relevant from an exterior frontage standpoint. Here's the landscape plan here with the hedging around the property, showing pavers for each of the patios, some future and existing tree samples, and of course the small storm garden that was being proposed as part of the landscape front as a swale front yard. I'll be honest, the first time I've heard staff's concern about the competing needs for stormwater management with the swale and the existing trees was in the report for this meeting. It's something I've not had time to address yet. And it's something that we can look into. But again, I that's the first I've heard of it, but it's something that I'm confident we will be able to work on a landscape and civil design that works between the two. And if we need to reduce the size of the drainage swale further, we can. However, I will say again, just to reiterate, our arborist has reviewed these plans, and to date they have been satisfied with the layout and placement. But we can make changes to address concerns as they come up. Again, the two variances to highlight is the lot coverage from 50 to 54%, which again comes down to the kind of the livability of these homes and ensuring that we weren't forced to create a partial 3-story plan for this area. And then the other one being the front yard setback, which was already mentioned. And again, we are still quite far away from the streetscape, and we do leave a significant amount of relief here. You can see the surveyed tree of the existing deciduous trees, both the branch areas as well as the root ball areas are far enough away from the building envelope that our professional project arborist did not have any concern with the placement of those trees relative to the proposed building envelope. And I should add as well that a arborist will be on site supervising the excavation and future construction throughout the project, as is standard with every new build. So that concludes my presentation. Again, it's been fun to be a part of the first small lot housing proposal in Sydney under the new Bill 44 changes. Last thing I'll say, because I'm sure the variance will come up here on site, height versus lot coverage. The provincial guidelines do talk about 50 to 60% lot coverage when they came out. And I feel that 54 at one level is kind of a good hybrid between what the province has recommended and what came out within the town's proposed zoning bylaw at 50. And yeah, I think it's a great little plan, and I think it'll do a lot to address housing needs for families within the neighborhood.
Okay, any questions from commission members, please? Okay.
Yep.
I was wondering what improvements, civil-wise, you're undertaking for the access lane. Indicates on the plan that it's gravel now. Are you undertaking something similar to? What are you doing there?
As is the case with all infill developments along these laneway properties in the Orchard neighborhoods, and as is the standard with the Town of Sydney's engineering department, it will be upgraded to asphalt pavement.
Okay, thank you.
Lucino?
Thank you. So I have a question about what's draining into that rain garden. We're not catching roof runoff, or because I think what I'm getting at here is we want to really protect that tree on the corner. It's a very character defining tree for that neighborhood. So you might not have the answer to that because you did mention briefly, haven't looked into this, but that rain garden could actually enhance that tree, especially now that I just heard that the lane will be paved. So we've got some serious drainage issues like compounding in one area. So given there's drainage, would you consider all permeable paving for the project? Because there's not a lot of paving. I see it's a mix of permeable versus concrete.
It's something that could be considered for the property. I think that it's important to point out that, I mean, the rain garden was as much as an aesthetic thing as it was a civil piece. There is adequate stormwater management on the property as it's designed. Both the arborist civil engineer and landscape architect were satisfied with the layout of that that rain garden. That being said, it is something I need to look into further. I would hate to commit to permeable pavers as a reaction to this, because as nice as they are aesthetically and as they do have qualities that enhance stormwater management, they also come at a much more significant cost. And part of this proposal is trying to create more modest family housing. It was pointed out earlier, comparing townhouses down the street that were sitting on the market not selling. And I want to make sure that this project is done in a way that meets a price point that actually is attainable to young families. And add-ons, while they seem small, like, oh, just do every paver permeable, that will have a significant cost to the overall project.
Thanks.
On the north side of the property, that, the sort of side yard or backyard, I guess it would that then become part of that unit D as far as who gets to use that?
That was the intent, that, yeah, effectively the north yard would kind of be like unit A's front yard and have that kind of public-private feeling. And the rear yard on the north side for unit D, it really only has value to them effectively. And it's a really decent, with those improved setbacks, it's a decent kind of shaded private area. And I think it would really enhance the livability of that rear unit.
Yeah, no, I agree. It'd be really nice. Has there been any thought to putting like a door off the kitchen, sort of in line with what you have off of unit A, so that it's accessible?
That's a good idea.
We kept them all fairly similar just because they are tight, and we didn't want to, like, adding doors obviously impacts where furniture goes and things like that, so we kept it a consistent rhythm. I get your point though, that it could be a trade-off, one or the other, and south or west exposure are both optimal in a lot of cases, and so it's something we can certainly look into.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I have just one question. I know that garages in most of our new constructions are very tiny, and you're looking at families living here, and kids will have bikes, adults will have bikes. What about storage of those kinds of things? Because there's no driveway to park in here. There's not enough space for that. So the cars would have to go into the garage, and I'm curious how one deals with all these other things that one needs.
Yeah, I mean, if I think about my own home, I have a modest garage as well, and what we've done is we've utilized the fact that these new construction builds, such as this one, would be the garage is going to be equipped with at least a 9-foot ceiling, and so there's typically storage that you can place like either side mount or upper mount. There's a lot of affordable solutions such as that right now. I haven't at development permit stage, I haven't gone into detailed interior designing yet, but it is something that we're actively talking about and looking into. And it's also one of the reasons, again, not bikes is a bad example, but it's another reason why we're looking at attic space, because things like the Christmas tree that you might sometimes store in a garage then has a place to relocate.
Okay. No other comments? Okay. Thanks for the presentation. And at this point, we'd like to do roundtable. You have any comments, observations? I will take notes on that. Why don't we start?
Okay.
Todd?
I absolutely love it. I think it looks absolutely great. I love the sort of modern farmhouse aesthetic. In fact, like the gooseneck lights that go across the I guess it's the side. It might look nice to have a couple more on the orchard side, and I think it needs a weather vane. That is all.
Fergie?
I really like the overall look of this development as well. I think it's really well done. But I'm always a stickler about variances, and I'm just going to express my opinion about all of this, not that this is the way it should be or not. The front variance, the one that's facing south onto Orchard Avenue, I kind of feel like because we're picking up an additional meter in the rear yard, it's a bit of a trade-off. And because there is so much public land out onto the Orchard Road side, I feel like that is actually a variance that I could support. The lot coverage variance, where we have a maximum lot coverage of 50%, and the proposal is for 54.2. I'm worried about that because of the experiences that we've had in the Orchard neighborhood over the years. I think the lot coverages in the Orchard neighborhood, when it was all just small residential, I think it was 35%. It might have been 40%, but we had a lot of creep on that, with developers telling us they couldn't fit all the features that they wanted in the house without expanding the lot coverage. And it just expands and continues to expand. So my concern is that if on this first project we're going out an additional 4.2%, when we see the next one, it will be more. And the one following that, it will be more again. And I have concerns about these neighborhoods where we're going to be having a lot more units built. And we're going to be putting much larger building loads onto the land. And that might cause a problem in the long term, particularly fire department type problems. So I don't feel like I probably want to support the increased lot coverage. But overall, I really like the look of this project. It has really good articulation, really nice style, great use of materials, lots of open space around the project.
Okay, Harold?
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I agree with most of the comments. I mean, in a positive way. I think it opens up spaces for young families by keeping the cost in control, and I like the fact that they also include the lane paving for access purposes. So yeah, I think it's a pleasing building from an optical perspective, and I'm sure it's very practical also the way it's designed. Thank you.
Okay, Lucina?
Thank you. Yeah, generally in favor of the project. I do have some concerns about a variance for parcel coverage. It's 5% basically variance, which, you know, is not insignificant. Think if they met the parcel coverage, you could either gain larger patios or you have them play with those setbacks. But I think it's really important to focus on that tree on the corner, because that's quite a nice feature on that street. So I think that's about it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Kim?
I think the proponent here has done an excellent job of working within the constraints of this site, and even though there is a loss of trees, that the protection that they have been able to undertake with their arborist is laudable. I think that as a result of that, I would support the reduced setback on Orchard because of the manner of adjusting the trees. I think that the improvement of the laneway is also provides amenity space to families to these units. I think that the balance of having three bedroom or 2 bedroom and den type spaces for home offices is does justify a higher lot coverage with the benefit that otherwise would be a 3-story structure, and so I think that's I'm feeling that that's an acceptable offset, rather than having a very high and imposing building. I think the building settles into the community quite well, and I also note that there's a high lot coverage, small lot coverage of other homes within a block of this unit. So I think that it's in context with that. So I'm accepting of the submissions for this project. Okay, Alex.
Thank you for the presentation. I think it's a great project. I think the design is very thoughtful. I like how I like the south side of it. Like the intent to make the orchard side as an entrance. I think it blends very well with the street. It's a great idea. Overall, it's beautifully looking building. We have to consider that it's a very small lot. So for that reason, and for the reason that I do like the 2 stories concept, I would not likely support anything higher than this in this neighborhood. I think the proponent mentioned that the next door building is a 1-story building, so I appreciate the thoughtfulness in this. With that, I have no problem with 54%, 54.2% lot coverage. I do think that 3 bedrooms in 2-story building is a very appealing housing for small families, for young families, for families. So I think I would support this variance. The variance of reduced setback, I believe Orchard is 60 or 66 foot right away, so I have no problem with reducing that. I think there's still a lot of real estate there, and plus, concerning trees, I think that works just fine. So yeah, overall, I really like the project. I think it's very well done.
Okay, George.
Yeah, I'm not gonna reiterate too much of what other people have said. I also like what you've done with the site. Regarding the variances, I completely understand, given the number of trees, protected trees that are around the site, why the setback towards the orchard should be relaxed, and I agree with that. And also concur that it's a very small lot. So yeah, I'm okay with the other variants as well. Yeah, no, overall, well done. Thanks.
Okay, I've just got a few quick comments. I don't want to add any more to what has been said. Just, I do share the concern about what I would call variance percentage or site coverage percentage creep. We're got to be careful about that, but and the point is that all lots in that area are small, so you're not going to use that as the rationale. Council has to make sure that when they draft zoning bylaws, that an appropriate structure or appropriate structures can be placed on them. And I can see where not going to 3 stories does make a lot of sense here. Okay, so other than that, won't add anything else. Okay, so we've come to the recommendations. I guess there are two variances here. We could do a straw poll very quickly, and then we don't even have to worry about, we can just pass the recommendations. With respect to the first variance, the setback, anybody in favor, raise your hand.
We're talking about the front yard setback.
The front yard setback, yeah. Okay, everybody's in favor. And then with respect to site coverage, in favor? Opposed? Okay, Bernardino Lucina opposed, okay. Okay, so given the time constraint here, can we, rather than reading out the recommendations, simply move them?
That seems fair.
Does everybody agree?
Yeah, as they are the standard, yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
efficient, right?
Recommendation number one, which is the notification for development variance permit application. A mover,
I'll move it.
Eric,
Second.
Alex, second.
You can
Discussion?
do the- Sorry, you can do the whole thing.
Together.
You can do the whole.
Doesn't have to be voted on one by one. You could vote on the whole
So
thing
it's
together.
1 through 3F.
Okay, retract that motion. Eric, do you want to move recommendations 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, I'll move 1 through 3F be approved.
I'll second.
Alex, okay. Any discussion? No, this is not railroading, but it's, I think we're all on the same page here. Okay, call the question. All in favor? Opposed?
Yep.
Okay, Bernadine and Lucina, okay. Okay, that brings us, well, Mr. Paltiel, just thank you for your patience with us this afternoon.
Thank you all very much for your time and feedback.
Okay, good. Okay, next item, items disposition by council.
Should we do the record of decision? Discussion?
We're getting anxious here, aren't I? Getting hungry. Okay, a number of things here. I think there was a general feeling of favorable feeling towards the proposal, both in terms of
Sorry, can you start again?
the general favorability to the proposal.
It's not a
The
word according to word.
what's that?
It's not a
Not
word.
accepting that word.
It's not a word according to word.
General
We know what you
support.
General
You
support.
could keep going, but
Shakespeare made new words all the time.
okay, that's good to know where you value yourself.
General support for the proposal, okay. And it was, okay, in terms of the aesthetic, design.
Some members thought it needed a weather vane.
Some.
One
I
did,
can't,
for sure.
I can't speak for everybody, but I'm sure.
And let's see, the variances were supported or by most members. Let me rephrase that. The setback variance was supported by all
Unanimous.
members
Unanimously.
unanimously. Very good. And there was some disagreement about the site coverage and concern about the precedent of a first proposal, let me see it. One of the first, I should put it that way, one of the first variance requests for site coverage being granted. Is that redundant?
The first, you mean the first under the zoning bylaw?
Under the new zoning bylaw, right?
The first proposal requiring, the very first proposal requiring that.
Right, that's a better word. Yeah.
Sorry? There was some disagreement about the site coverage variance.
Some disagreement
There
that,
was some concern that the very first proposal under the new bylaw requiring the, is it, am I speaking your words?
no, that's
Am I,
Although the last one. was
one of the
second.
first.
setting the precedent, I guess, is
Yeah.
what you're trying to say.
I think we're gonna see a lot more of it though, because trying to fit 4 houses on small lots is.
It's, yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, concerned
Right,
about
people need to build
the
small
precedent
houses on
of,
small lots.
concerned about this as a
Small
precedent.
houses.
Here we go with that.
Yeah.
Okay, other members felt that there was a positive trade-off for this for the site coverage variance in the creation of a 2-story rather than 3-story building. Okay, that's about it, but I have, anybody want to add anything to that? Kim?
Did we want to encourage the developer to provide for storage in the attic as he proposed? Or
Okay.
as, suggested?
Yep.
I agree with that.
I actually don't think that second bullet, like the setback variance, I think everybody supported that. It was actually the lot coverage variance where there was some disagreement.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Great.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Okay, Councillor Ventura.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll be brief. We are approaching the unwelcome end to summer hibernation. And so I'm sure we'll see some more work directed to APC. I know committee of the whole this evening, there's an item on commercial project on Harbor Road, which has a recommendation that comes to APC. We'll see how that proceeds through Cal and council. I'm not coming to my mind of anything else that is currently in the queue waiting to come to APC. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Mr. Hagan?
We've received a few new development applications that are on the town's website with the webpage showing active development applications. So they're currently under staff review and they haven't gone to committee of the whole yet. So there could be more this fall.
Okay. Aside from that, just out of interest and reminder, this group will be aware the project that's broken ground in West Sydney, Beacon West, that's on airport land. And so that was that hotel project. So just in the event there's questions in the community of you from friends and neighbors, that is a BAA project on airport lands, and that is Marriott Town Suites hotel property, which you may recall. So I'll leave that there, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I have one issue, and just a gentle reprimand. The across the street from where that hotel is being built, there's the council gave approval to the 144 unit. And I know the APC had strong feelings, in fact, did not support the proposal as it was put forward. And I guess I'm a bit disappointed that the proposal does not reflect any of the APC comments on it, that it went pretty much as it had been presented. And I thought the APC comments were really quite to the point. A lot of work had been put in by some members with respect to massing and siting. And I think that is an issue. Some
members.
yes.
That's right.
Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think I don't concur that there weren't any changes adopted, because I think around the noise attenuation in particular, there was some further developments in that area. The critical piece that likely would have been the greatest serious challenge, the developer in that case, of those 140 plus rental units, which the town desired to see move forward, was the prospect of breaking it into, some units, if you will, away from the one unit. So I get the form and character discussion that this group had and the concerns that were there, and those are certainly brought forward to council. But I think at the end of the day, the position of the developer was retained, that wasn't going to be economically viable in terms of the project that they created to move forward. So yeah, I hear you, and know that APC's position was certainly presented at council. I think that's probably been a long-standing location that we've been keen to see move forward with the project, and the fact that it's rental and that it will contain some below market component to it was of significant interest as a whole, I think, to the community.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other comments, observations? Okay, we'll have a motion to adjourn. Bernadine?
I move to adjourn.
Oh, second. Okay. Anybody opposed? No, all in favor? Okay, thank you all for your patience and time.
Thank you for
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for sharing. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye, Harold.